Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome once again to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with Mike Tolbert, who is actually sitting next to me in the studio. It's a delight to have him with us, as always. And Mike Hightower is back, of course, at his place in North Carolina, but he's joining us remotely, and it's good to have all three of you here. There are a lot of things that we want to talk about here in this episode of Mike's on Mike. We thought we'd talk about the contentious feud that's going on between the certain council members in the city council and the mayor's office over the proposed budget. Also want to take a look at Jacksonville's long quest as an identity and a moniker that fits, that people are not going to laugh at, as they seem to be doing with the current moniker, which Mark Woods talked about last week on the show, where welcome to the free state of Florida. But first, Mr. Tolbert, let's talk about one of those contentious city council members, Rory Diamond, and seems to be at the center of this storm.
Yeah, let's talk about Roy for a minute. We probably should go spend more than a minute talking about Roy. Roy, if you don't know this, Roy represents the beaches, the three beach communities in the west part of the west side of the Intercoastal Waterway. Right. I remember the first time I met Roy Diamond was the night he was sworn in to the Neptune Beach City Council. He was a young guy. I was very impressed. Later on, I took a tour of K9s for Warriors that he gave me. And once again, I was extremely impressed by what they were doing out there. But right after that, and after he got elected to the city council, Jacksonville City Council, his impressiveness went away for me, frankly. It has several factors dealing with policy, if not attitude and personality. But when we tried to put the referendum on the ballot to raise money, raise a half penny for school construction, new schools, renovated schools, mm-hmm. He was one of those who tried to block the school board from even letting it go to a vote. And then when it finally they lost the case and it had to go to a vote, he also voted against it in the council. Still, continued to do that. He did the same thing with the next issue for teacher pay. And then my favorite of all was his support of Lot J. He was strongly behind the Lot J thing, and he's been contentious ever since. And it's not surprising to me that he is doing everything he can to try to stop the mayor, to hurt the city. I'm not surprised at all. He represents the beaches out there. He wants to run for Congress when Rutherford steps down. That's where his brain is right now, and he's playing to that narrow niche and not doing what's right and right for the community. Other than that, I don't have another observation.
Okay. Now, there was a Folio Weekly article that came out back in March of 2022 that focused on Mr. Diamond. And Mr. Hightower, do you want to go into that a little bit with us and what you found?
Yeah. I want to pick my words because Mr. Tolbert is doing a great job of threading this needle. I'm going to use the word disingenuous as opposed. That will be my observation as opposed to a judgment. Picking up on what Mike Tolbert said, we were all very impressed when he ran for the beaches, and everybody had great hopes in him. And he came in as a conservative. I appreciated that. But then what happened was, when you kind of go back to this Folio article, which was March 21 of 2022, and all you got to do is Google it, and the name of the article is Doggone. And he goes into great detail about his, about what he did at K9s for Warriors, and I'll leave that for people to make their own judgment. But the part that I have found just as a burr in my saddle, the whole thing, is about, candidly, is how he has stretched, I wouldn't say the truth. He's just been totally disingenuous with his resume. And when you go online right now, if you go to his bio, and you read his bio, it floors me about how he has just added to it. And when you read about all the things that he has accomplished, I have to just say, you read the article and there's a little bit of stretching.
Fudging.
I got to just quote some of this stuff. In his resume, he said he was an alumni of the White House and he was a deputy associate director for President George W. Bush during 9/11. He asserts that he helped in, quote, founding the U.S. Office of Homeland Security and watched 2 wars unfold. He said he was briefed. He worked for Governor Schwarzenegger in California. He said he became a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice from 2011. When you go back and sort of look at this is really what it ended up. During that time that he was at the, quote, White House, he was an unpaid intern. He didn't do anything about creating Homeland Security. Candidly, and he wasn't there when the 2 wars. It was in a different state. What he did for Governor Schwarzenegger in California is up for real judgment. And he was never a prosecutor in that. And I think what's happened is, if you will remember correctly...
Mike, wait a minute. He was an intern just like he was in the White House.
Correct.
Yeah,
exactly. And he was unpaid in all these jobs. He was an unpaid intern during all this time.
I even saw a document from the Justice Department that responded to a question about whether or not he did what he claimed to have done at the Justice Department, and the answer was a very emphatic no. That he was an unpaid staff member, which is kind of like, to me, being an intern or being a practice teacher.
My understanding from the polling that we've heard from Dr. Mike Bender and all, 2 of the biggest issues that we're talking about in Jacksonville is affordable housing and homeless. Both those are issues that the beaches area are confronted with. And yet he votes against that, and he's voting against it. He has never, ever voted in favor of the city budget. Even during Curry's, he always voted no. This is a no guy. And so what he's really trying to do is just be to the left, to the right of everybody else, so that he can run as a conservative in the future. And I think when we start talking about where we want Jacksonville to be and what we want there to be, it's about a quality of life. That's what we want in Jacksonville. We've got young people. And 2 of the biggest issues here in Jacksonville is the homeless, which I think we're going to talk about, which is a safety issue in downtown Jacksonville, and affordable housing. My understanding is that there are 3,500 units of affordable housing needed in Jacksonville, which means there are 26,352 people waiting for low-income housing. This is 2 of the things that Rory is against. So when we talk about the quality of life and where we want our city to be, we have this person, for only my observation, political reasons, is saying no to the mayor about 2 issues that are important for the quality of life in Jacksonville. So
let's let Miller, Mike, let's let Miller kind of get in here and talk about these 3 issues: the homelessness, the workforce preparation, and the third one.
And as you know, all 3 of those areas were part of the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement that we did with the Jaguars, where the Jaguars were willing to give the city $150 million if we matched that with the same $150 million for the CBA. Well, as people probably know, through this budget process that we've seen, the City Council, including Rory Diamond, decided to carve out the CBA from the overall program of the stadium enhancements. And as a result of that, we don't know if we're going to be ending up losing $50 million from the Jaguars that they were willing to put in. Let me just focus, if I can, on the homelessness for just a moment, because there's an important issue that many people may have forgotten about or never known about. Our state legislature, back 2 years ago, voted in favor of House Bill 1365. 1365 says that homeless individuals are prohibited from camping on city streets, sidewalks, and parks, and instead placed in temporary shelters monitored by law enforcement agencies. The state of Florida has enforcement tools needed to ensure local governments comply with that. The interesting part about this is another one of those unfunded mandates where the state is saying, you've got to do this, but we're not going to give you the money to do that. So what the mayor's done, and I haven't seen this publicized very much, and I'm just going to show this to the audience so they can see it. It's called A New Day, Homeless Plan to Address the Passage of State Law 1365. And this goes into great depth about some 14 different points that the mayor feels must be addressed if we're going to get a handle on this homelessness issue. The total cost for it, $13.6 million. But let's talk a little bit and hear for ourselves what this riff is between Diamond and a few other of the Republicans on the city council, and what the mayor has to say. She's not going to take this sitting down. And listen to this as we roll this tape.
I think you have individuals who spend a lot of time, frankly, being part of the problem instead of part of the solution.
Council Member Rory Diamond disagreed.
That's a piggy bank I hope we never touch.
The mayor, who's expected opposition from the Republican majority on the council, however, believes it's all politically motivated.
It's like starving your family so that you can keep more money in the bank than you really need. And so I don't really understand it beyond the fact that I think some of it is simply politically motivated. Honestly, it's an insult to the voters who put me into office. People put me here because they trust me to do what I believe is best for the city.
It is wildly fiscally irresponsible to transfer anything close to that.
But at the end of the day, let me do my job.
And with that, we'll move on from the homelessness issue, but it's a very important issue.
It's extremely important.
I do hope we get some more play on this, because it's a very good plan that really has not seen much publicity at all in the media.
Well, a couple of things, Mike. When we drove into town today from Brooksville, you can't miss the homeless. They're everywhere. And when we go over and visit our friend Alan Bliss at the Historical Society, we have to ride through and circle and kind of evade or avoid people that are homeless all over the place over there. And something's got to be done. I don't know that what the legislature has done is the right thing to do, but it's been done, and something's got to be done about the homeless. There's no question about that. And part of the squabble between Diamond and Deegan has to do with spending reserve funds. And Donna talked about that when she was on our show. But, reserve funds have always been sacrosanct, and that started with consolidation. When the first years of consolidation with Mayor Tanzler, there were two or three things that you couldn't touch. One of them was you could not touch the reserve funds. Another one was you could not raise the ad valorem. In fact, for years, the mayor bragged about every budget year reducing the ad valorem and cutting employees. And of course, as good as it sounded back then, we saw what happened, what it caused later on. So Deegan has taken the approach that they've overfunded the reserve fund. They got plenty of money in there. We've got these needs to move the city forward, and she wants to use some of those funds. And all of a sudden, Mr. Diamond says no. He's not going to let that happen. I don't know how he by himself stops that, unless there's other conversations been going on that are not supposed to happen by law anyhow.
Well, Mike, on that point, on the reserves, my understanding is that the number in reserves, we have $345 million in operating reserves and another $125,000 for emergency reserves, and which is almost, so when you add this up, this is twice what we, in order for the municipality to be, for our rating. And by the way, our ratings have now has gone up from Fitch. Now, the amount of money that the mayor wants to use on these issues that we've talked about is 47.2 from the reserves. And you know what that amounts to is 2.5% out of the reserves for a quality of life, something that we need to move our community forward. So to underscore what Mike Culver and what we're saying. Being an obstructionist for the sake of being an obstructionist is not good for our community to move it forward.
I guess the question that we do have, however, is that where do we think this is all going to take us?
Well, one of the problems that the Mayor Deegan has is she is from the beaches. And under a lot of normal circumstances on the mayors that we've known, if a councilman who represented the district was doing what Diamond is doing, that mayor would pop a whip and say, your potholes are not going to get filled, and your constituents are going to be calling you about it. But Donna, I don't think, can do that because she's a resident. So she's between a rock and a hard place, I believe. There got to be maybe some other things she can do, but I'm not sure what that would be. But somebody needs to pick up a stick and get his attention.
Well, one of the things that is we've talked about, and the mayor is very good, is that she is a great communicator. And what Mike Tolbert has said on more than one occasion, you can never over-communicate with the voter. And I believe that she has a message, and number two, they're going to push her. And I think that, as we all know, she is very good in the media, and I would not take her on something. And also, as I remember what John Thrasher said, always try to be the most reasonable person in the room, and that will get you, 9 times out of 10, it'll get there.
Let's change the subject for a minute, kind of flip it over.
I got to tell you, before you start this, I know where you're going to go with this. I must have received 8 phone calls from friends who are out of state who have come to Florida for one reason or another. And they have all said, without exception, what the hell is that sign about? Welcome to the free state of Florida. I immediately refer them to Mark Woods' appearance on our show last week, just to say, if you really want to hear how absurd this is, listen to what Mark Woods had to say.
Well, this is not necessarily about the free state of Florida, but it is about slogans and logos and identification. You know, on our last trip to Jacksonville, previous trip to Jacksonville, we went to dinner at the Beach Bowl, newly renovated Beach Bowl restaurant.
How was that?
It was wonderful.
Was it really?
Service sucked.
Well, they're fresh.
They're getting used to it. But when we walked in the door, we were greeted by at least a 30-foot tall photograph poster that was Mayor Tanzler and Lee Meredith, the actress Lee Meredith, putting the moving the city limits sign all the way out, and there was that sign that said right there, "Welcome to the bold new city of the South."
Yeah.
Now, what concerns me is people to this day, all these years later, even though we've gone through slogan after slogan after slogan after slogan, people still refer to Jacksonville as the bold new city of the South. At the time they put that sign up there and created that slogan, it was all about a new consolidated government, but it was not it was not applicable to a lot of things that were going on negatively in Jacksonville. Today, I really believe Jacksonville is the bold new city of the South. Instead of tinkering around with all these damn logos and slogans, I mean, let me find the list here. River City,
yeah.
Florida's first coast, where Florida begins. It's easier here. And now we're the flip side of Florida. And I had to get this out of my crawl. You got a burr, I got a burr. Because I mean, I've been in this business for a long time, and what we are misunderstanding is there's a difference between an advertising campaign for tourism and an identity for the city, a lasting identity for the city. I love New York. I mean, think about it, the Windy City.
Mm-hmm. Virginia's for lovers.
Virginia's for lovers. But you got all these cities that have these names that have stuck. And we keep fishing around here, and I think we got one in our lap that was a gift to us 60 years ago almost, and we ought to take advantage of it. Now I'm off my soapbox.
Do you know what the official slogan is for the state of Florida, guys? Do you know what it is? It's "In God We Trust."
Really?
That is the official slogan of the state of Florida, is "In God We Trust."
Well, I want to go. Let's go back. You know, we had Michael Corrigan, the CEO.
And by the way, the reason they have that is because everyone who comes here leaves all their money here when they come here. So we're taking it from the dollar bill and putting it on our slogan.
Well, when Michael Corrigan, when Michael Corrigan, the CEO of Visit Jacksonville, was our guest recently, and he started talking about this new slogan, the flip side of Florida, and why they were making this change, what this was all about. And let's play that tape.
That's 100% the challenge that we face every single day. The good news is Jacksonville's 840 square miles. The bad news is Jacksonville's 840 square miles. And we obviously do a lot of research on who comes to visit us, why they come to visit us, and everything else. And the reality is there is no one thing. There is no one reason people come to Jacksonville.
Again, I just want to end with this. Iconic identifiers for a city are very different than a slogan for an advertising campaign. And somehow we got to figure that out and get on with business.
Let's have some fun. It's obvious that we three happen to be of the senior citizen genre. Okay. That's obvious. It may not be to some of you who've seen our faces and think, no, they can't be that old. Actually, most of you were looking at us and saying, they're really that young?
Those must be the ones who need glasses.
And it's obvious that we as seniors, and a lot of water has flowed underneath our bridges over the last several decades. We've all done different things in our lives and had reasonably successful careers, I think. But when we were young and we were growing up, the question always comes from our family. My father used to be the one. What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? I'll end it, but let you guys go ahead and start.
Well, I'll start it. When I was a kid and playing Little League Baseball, I wanted to be a Yankees outfielder. That was my goal. And then when I found out I couldn't hit the curveball, it kind of vanished.
You and Mickey Mantle.
But I always liked to write. And I can remember when I think I was in junior high school and I was working for the city recreation department during the summer at a particular park. I created a column for the daily newspaper called Nicky Northside, when I would write at least weekly about what went on in the park with kids. And about that same time, I was babysitting at neighborhood kids. And so I put together a mimeograph newsletter for parents, telling them what their kids did and how much fun they had and what we all those kind of things. So that kind of got me in the business. And so I made a great choice. I went to Auburn University that did not have a school, a journalism school or writing school. So everything I did was just, hands-on. I ended up in Little Rock, Arkansas in college and as a sports editor, sports reporter for the newspaper right there. And one thing led to another. And then when I got to Jacksonville, shortly after getting here, I got into politics. So who the hell knows what you're going to be when you grow up?
That's true. What about you, Hightower?
Believe it or not, goes back to high school. All I really wanted to do, because of the teachers I had, was wanted to be a history teacher. That's really what happened. And then I got bitten by the political bug. And as you all know, from the Young Democrats to working for Jimmy Carter, and then being taken across to the Republican line by Ronald Reagan, and then spending the last, Mr. Tolbert has been doing it 55 years. I guess I've been doing it 53 years, and just been involved. And then from that, it's sort of just from the folks of the people who helped me along, wanted to kind of take it back and try to be a mentor and a coach, or get people to be coaches for the next generation. And I guess that's just using all the good things that these people have done in their historical life's journey, is sharing that with the mentoring program called the Emerging Leaders Program. So, but kind of coming full circle, having met Tolbert 1972, and here we are back here when we're still youthful, maybe not look it, but youthful. Huh? And here we are back here on this thing talking about history at Jacksonville and talking about what's going to be happening in the future. Unbelievable how it comes full circle.
It is.
And then Mr. Miller, come to find out, you and I were on the same road with Jimmy Carter.
Yep. And
all the times we spent with Mayor Delaney, with Tolbert. I mean, when you kind of think about Jacksonville, the 2 degrees of separation, and that's what really goes back to what Tolbert said. It's a unique city, the bold new city. We got a lot going for us. We need to build on the great new things we got and the friends we got.
Well, my growing up and my ultimate vocation came from my father when I was about 12 years old. We used to watch The Tonight Show all the time. At that time, of course, Carson was still on. And I never forgot my dad once looking at me and saying, "Someday, Michael, I want Ed McMahon to say, 'Here's Mike,' instead of 'Here's Johnny.'" And that just stuck with me ever since then. And of course,
Here's Mike.
Exactly.
And here's Mike now.
There it is. But my father always saw me, and he always thought the epitome would be if I starred on The Tonight Show. That's what he wanted.
I was going to say, I hope your dad is not pissed off that instead of ending up with Johnny Carson, you ended up with us.
Yeah. You get what you pay for, unfortunately, Mr. Miller.
This has been fun, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's good. Always good to have you all here. Thank you, Mike Tolbert and Hightower. We'll see you when you come back in. And we want to thank all of you for joining us. And once again, of course, remind you that we wouldn't be able to do this program if it weren't for the generosity of our friends at the Jacksonville History Center and the Historical Society. Our thanks to Alan Bliss and the donors who keep the cameras rolling and keep the lights on. We'll see you again next week, everybody. Have a good week.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.
Mike.